Hey Table Talkers, quick note before we start. In today's episode, we discuss dealing with mental illness. Some of the topics addressed in this episode may be distressing for some listeners. If you, or someone you know, feel the need, seek out the support of close friends, family, medical professionals, or even us if necessary. We take this topic very seriously and ask that you do too.
I'm Olivia, and I am actually planning on going to school to be a licensed therapist.
Oh.
It's relevant.
I'm John. I am married to a special educator, and I'm currently sitting on the floor.
Who's the special educator? I'm not a special educator right now.
I'm finally tall.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Graduating with a special education degree.
I'm standing, by the way.
I was laughing at that because it's like, you're currently above me. That's because I'm sitting on the floor and you're sitting in a chair.
Finally, it's happening to me. I'm taller than John.
If I stand
Ow!
She had to hurt herself in the process.
Don't touch me!
That's what happens when you have hubris.
I'm Jordan, and I tolerate all of this.
And here I thought we were giving our qualifications based
I'm
off
Jordan.
of...
I tolerate all of this.
I'm technically not qualified yet as a therapist. I'm just in the process.
Yeah.
I never know where to go with these, because sometimes it's like I'll get something really
First
stupid.
of all, what's your name?
I have to think of what I'm going to
Can I
call
give you one?
myself before my name.
Can Liv
Can I
give you one?
Just this once.
Oh.
I'm Caroline, and I'm...
Darn it! Did you forget?
No, it just was like really fast. You're Caroline, and you are sitting to the left of me, Olivia. I ruined my one and only shot at this. No, I got one. I'm Caroline, and I'm actually Olivia because we sound the same on the podcast.
That's true.
Is it really sad that we do? Sometimes I have to go, hold on, which one of us is talking now? I hate that.
Yeah, try having to make the sound bites. Like, actually, who said that? I have to actually remember who said that.
Wait a minute, Caroline doesn't have a tattoo. Yeah, that's definitely me.
It was like when it was the click one. You said, John, please stop clicking your pen. Thank you. I was like...
That wasn't me, was it?
I really thought at
Was
first
that
I was like,
I don't know.
oh no.
It's okay. It's like
It was you.
It's like
then
people
I
who listen to the
remembered.
McElroys. You gotta distinguish the brothers, and it takes a little while.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to distinguish us,
Eventually.
Eventually.
I can tell the difference.
Well, that's because
just me.
you're in person. Somehow when our voices get recorded, it's
over the
we're
podcast.
in person.
Off the recording, I can tell.
That's because
I don't
know
listen
us
to
for
my
a while.
own voice enough. John?
I understand that because I really actually don't like my own voice
I hate
when I listen to it.
We're podcasters, and we don't like listening to ourselves. Da-da.
I hate
I actually don't mind listening to myself. I thought I would, and listening to the podcast.
You're the odd one out.
It's
always.
Reference to the YouTube channel. I love it.
Always.
I just can't stand it because when I was in school to get my special education degree, I had to watch myself back and dissect what I was doing. I hate hearing it now.
So,
I don't like
tell
watching
us
myself
why
dance.
Tell us why we're talking so much about therapy and
Why
special
I love
education and stuff.
It's because we're talking about mental health in the Christian field.
And we're talking like this for the entire episode now.
No, please don't, John. We will have to kill you by the end of it.
You notice how I turned back towards you now? You know
But
why?
he's sitting on the ground.
It's because she feels a dominant presence toward you now.
I always feel like a dominant presence toward John. I walk in the room and I'm like, I am now dominating. It's fine. Because I have a big personality. Personality bigger than John. I'm gonna dunk on you.
She stood tall and he
Still
poked her in the
taller
butt.
than
You're barely taller than me when you're
He poked her
standing
in
up.
the tummy.
And I'm on my knees.
Oh, goodness.
It's okay.
Don't pat me on the head.
Maybe one day you'll be tall, Olivia.
Aww.
Yeah, just stand my hair up.
I can do it! I can grow 7 inches tall!
Okay.
Okay, on topic.
Can I get a amen?
No.
Alright, so as we always start when we're talking about something that is murky, how are we defining mental illness?
Now, we're going to let you do it because of your
No,
rant.
I'm letting Liv go first.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Because I have a rant. Liv has a quick definition.
I have a quick definition. I define mental health / mental, illness. I put quotes around illness because I think there's different classifications. I define mental health and mental illness in 3 different categories. You have a chemical imbalance, you have a actual psychological imbalance, and then there's a third one that people tend to forget because we're talking about it within the Christian faith. Wow. Faith. It is a spiritual attach or demonic attachment onto yourself, causing you to have what would be perceived as a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my definitions, and I'm going to stick by them. That's how I'm going to run my practice. I'm done. Told you it was quick.
Boom.
What an easy
Mic
episode.
drop.
Please
I
don't
def-
actually,
Goodbye, thank you.
please don't actually drop the mic.
And that's been called to the table.
I'm going to defer my speech to Jordan.
Do you want to go before I,
I
go on
mean,
my rant?
Here. I want you to talk about your thing, and I'm trying to figure out when I'm gonna get to whatever I pulled up.
Well, that's what I was
Oh,
gonna
number
say.
2. Here, no, number. No. I actually do have something. It's really small. For
That's
this.
what I was
Just
saying.
making,
Go before I go on my rant.
I know, but I didn't realize I actually had something until I looked at
Fun
my notes.
editing all this out.
He's not going to because it's funny.
Go.
Okay, so because I suffer with a mental illness, I have had to remind myself, and I've also been told by others, it's not me, myself, as a person that is there's some horrible defect inside of me that is making me experience all of these horrible physical reactions to my amygdala overflowing with hormones and being stupid.
SAT
It's-
word.
They don't make you learn the
Amygdala.
amygdala. They don't make you learn the amygdala for the SAT. I've tutored people before. I know.
It's just
what
it's a
she's saying
$5 word.
Yes.
It's a big word.
I've been dropping a lot of those lately, haven't I?
Yes, you
All right.
have.
But it's the brain. It is the body that is ill. And sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish ourselves from the brain, from the heart. But we are more than the sum of our parts. God breathed the breath of life into a clay form, and it became a human being.
Mhm.
And so, just because your brain is being dumb, and your brain is telling you things that might be bad, like intrusive thoughts, or having panic attacks or something, that does not mean that you as a person are faking it, or wanting it on yourself, or seeking attention, or anything like that. You are not making yourself suffer because for some reason you are a bad person.
Mhm.
Mental illness affects people for various reasons. And I feel like you two aren't taking this seriously.
I am
because you
taking
two
this
are
seriously.
laughing in the
class.
freaking corner.
He said something.
I'm sure
Stop
you did.
talking
He
in
said
class.
something that we edited out. Or not, I don't know.
I
Anyway.
don't feel like you can because I'm in my rant mode now. So.
No, not that part. He said something. He referred to something earlier. Continue.
Keep going. It's fine.
I'm done, actually.
The boy and girl have decided to behave.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Okay.
I would say, well, first of all, I want to say what the definition we found online. We got it from the Mayo Clinic, and I want to put this out first so that there is a actual scientific.
I still don't know. Why is it called the Mayo Clinic? Because
I
all
don't
it
know.
makes me think of is it's a jar of mayonnaise telling me that I have cancer.
You know, Mayo's actually one of the, we're trying to podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
That's probably
We're
an
coming to
ambulance.
your house.
I hope they're not coming to my house.
Whoop, whoop.
Mayonnaise is actually one of the
Is
things
it an
on
instrument?
It's one of the things in the keto diet that is suggested that you utilize because it's high in fats. And on the keto diet, you're supposed to eat high fat
Yeah.
content. So some people think mayonnaise is actually healthy for you.
I mean,
Boom.
I think in small amounts, but yeah.
Yeah.
I still think it's weird that it's called the
Everything's
Mayo
healthy
Clinic.
for you in moderation, except
Yeah.
for drugs and
And
alcohol.
alcohol.
Well, that's okay for
In moderation, still.
moderation because Christ turned water into wine.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yes, it is, and I wasn't about to go into anything on it, but she already knew that.
I know that I've heard that
within
rant.
the passage about deacons and bishops, it says and can drink little wine. Not.
We will talk about that in
Later.
another episode.
All right, so the Mayo Clinic says that a mental illness is anything that affects your mood, your thinking, or your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
When we were looking at the stuff that was listed as a mental illness, I disagreed with some of them. And so I want to set the stage real quick that I have my degree in special education. So I'm coming at it from an education perspective and not necessarily a psychologist perspective like Liv is doing.
And the fact that you have worked with
And I've
many
worked,
kids.
yeah. I believe that mental illness is that category that anything that does not fit under physical or any of the other little boxes that they have for labeling stuff, they throw under mental illness. So if it's not a physical, I can't think of the word. The deformity. There we go. Sorry.
Disability?
Just a physical disability or a physical deformity.
Yeah.
If it's not anything like that, if it's not a learning disability, if it's not anything that can be put into those little categories, it gets thrown under mental illness.
I agree with you.
I don't like that. I think
yeah.
that it should be two separate different things. One of the things that they had under mental illness was dementia. Dementia is actually mostly a physical thing because it's the brain deteriorating. Yes, it affects your memory, it affects your mood, it affects your thinking, but it's actually a physical effect that's going on that is causing that. Because if you were to fix the brain deteriorating, then the problem would be fixed. But it's the fact that the physical thing is happening. Another thing they had on there was autism. Autism
Let
is
her go.
not...
Take the reins off. Let her go.
Autism is not a mental... Yeah. Is not a mental... What I would classify as a mental illness, I would classify, and this is where I'm going to come up with my two definitions, is a mental condition. I feel like anything that you can tell within the first year of life that you can test and you can see, just like Down syndrome, just like... kid is born with no arm, or if you can test it and you can see from the get-go that they have that, it is a mental condition. I feel like if it's a mental illness, it's something that was either brought on by a event like PTSD, where, a child may have gone through something, or going to war, whatever, it was brought on by something. And depression and anxiety can be brought on by something. It is an illness. It's like having a cold, which I have right now. It's an illness. I'm ill with a cold or having cancer. It can turn into a condition, and anxiety and depression can be a condition. There are some kids, I have family members that when they were 2 years old were showing signs of severe anxiety. So anxiety, depression, anything like that can be a condition.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, for me, I have to sit there and go, okay, is this a condition or is this an illness? Is this something that was brought on and we need to treat it? We need to treat the thing and go through therapy and whatever to treat that? Or are we sitting here and dealing with a condition where we treat the symptoms so that the person can live better? With a great example is a physical thing of like a person having no arm. Well, you can't grow an arm. What you can do is you can give them a robotic arm that treats the symptom of having no arm, but they still don't have a physical arm that's grown out of their body.
Mm-hmm.
They have something that's a temporary fix. So that's my thing. That's my little rant. Is you have to differentiate the two.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think it's something that a lot of people, like you were saying, a lot of people see something and are like, oh, it's mental illness, and brush it under the rug and then medicate it. Well, sometimes you don't need to medicate it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just a habit change.
Yeah.
That is as much that is as positive as medication as words. That is just as much of a positive influence as medication. I got it.
And there are some things.
confusing.
Sorry.
There are some conditions that do need to be treated with medication.
Absolutely.
I am somebody that if I don't have to take medication, I'm not gonna take medication.
Yeah.
But I understand that if what I struggle with, which I view as a mental illness, I have depression that developed from stuff that I went through as a teenager. if I ever got to the point where that was becoming a condition, and my therapist sat there and said, you need to be put on medication so that we can get you to deal with this stuff, then yeah, absolutely, I'm going to defer to what a doctor says. But I'm going to try and do everything possible before I get to that point.
Right.
So.
And that's where I sit back and say, like, the different, like, for my three, like, the chemical condition of a mental illness, the only way you can treat it is chemically balancing out that chemical imbalance in your brain, which can, like, that chemical imbalance can cause depression, can cause anxiety, it can cause lots of these mental illnesses that we see every day, and we just throw pills at some people, whereas sometimes it is just a mental shift. We need to rethink ourselves, like you were saying, before going into medication. How can we attack this one step at a time? And if it becomes a chemical imbalance, if we get to the root of some, there are chemicals in my brain that are not balancing out and it's causing me to feel depressed or anxiety, then you can give them the medication. And then my third one comes from experience of seeing how the spiritual world and the spiritual realm can actually influence our anxiety or our depression and in a spiritual sense.
Yeah.
I say all that to agree with you.
I appreciate that.
Of course.
The big thing that was a trigger for me was the autism one. Because, again, I've worked with kids with autism, and autism is your receptors, like how you receive information coming in. That's why a lot of times if you see children who have noise-canceling headphones but it's not connected to anything, that's a receptor thing. They are hearing things louder than what they should. And that's a huge sign of autism is if they are either not hearing things correctly or they're intensified. Same thing with sight. They're seeing things. When I was talking to John last night, one of the examples I used is when we're outside, we may see a bird fly by, and it's like, oh, that's a pretty bird. What a child with autism might see is a bird dive bombing them. Yeah. Because they're so zoned into what that object is doing.
Yes.
And so that's what bugs me, to sit there and say, well, it's a mental illness. No, it's a mental condition. Their brain is messed up in a way that what they're receiving from their senses is intensified. So that's where I get bugged. And that and dementia. And I was just like, no, dementia is not a mental illness. It's a mental condition.
It's things that
Let's share.
near and dear to...
I'm sorry, I just wanted to shift.
I know, that's the reason why I went to the floor, because I kept shifting last time.
I just think it's interesting that within the group, I needed medication because I just started having panic attacks that just wouldn't stop. And for... quite literally, I'm not going to say no reason, because college was an incredibly stressful, awful, at least spiritually and emotionally for me, experience. And when I got home, it's like once my body realized, oh, we can calm down now. That's when they started, and they just literally wouldn't stop. I mean, Jordan knows, because they were just one after another, and my hormones and chemicals were just so imbalanced. The only way that I could literally feel like a human being again was for them to put me on medication, and
absolutely,
I feel better now.
Yeah, it balances out those chemicals that are just like, and a lot of people find that if they're high in estrogen or high in testosterone in their body, that can cause a great deal of anxiety.
I have PCOS as well, so I have two things that work in tandem to make me feel like crap.
Oh, and there's another differentiation I want to say. Sorry. The question, because you and I got talking about this, Caroline, and you asked me what about people who have like a predisposition to certain things.
Yeah, because I was talking about my history.
This is the other thing I want to make sure that people understand. Having a predisposition of something does not mean that you automatically have a mental condition or a mental illness. You are more likely to have it, but that does not mean that from the get-go you have it. I have a predisposition of alcoholism because I have had, or not alcoholism, but addiction, due to members of my extended family and immediate family. And because there's that predisposition, and I know that, I'm very cautious about what I eat, what I drink, all that stuff.
Same here.
But that does not mean that my mental illness or my mental condition is that I'm an addict. Right. Because I'm more likely to, and I'm aware of that, and that could turn into a mental condition if I took that route. or a mental illness if I took that route. But just because you have a predisposition for something that's in your family does not mean you automatically have a mental illness or a mental condition. I want to point that out.
I agree with you.
It just means that you should be mindful in case you start showing symptoms. Like, I kind of wish my dad had talked to me about his past with it, because when I started having them, he was just like, oh yeah, so they'll just pop up randomly on me. I'll be at work and suddenly I'll feel one coming on and I'll go in the bathroom and lay down and wait for it to stop. And I was like, and you never told me this before? Like, I was very, very mad at him for that.
Yes,
but
Liv.
again, like we said, it's not,
Yeah.
it wasn't a guarantee.
Yeah.
But I was just sort of like shocked to learn that there had been a predisposition in the family.
Yes, Liv.
Edit the sex part out if you're uncomfortable. What does the acronym stand for that you're talking about?
Oh, PCOS?
Yes.
Oh, no. I'm not uncomfortable with this at all. I mean...
Yeah, I've
George
got it
got
too.
you.
Okay, so
okay,
we both...
I don't know what the acronym stands for.
It's okay.
I'm educated, but
No.
That's fine.
The listeners need to know this. It stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, which means that it's a hormonal thing that happens within our ovaries. There are tiny little cysts that grow on the eggs.
Yes,
and
I know exactly what this is now.
yeah, but well, I'll continue for them. Because it is a hormonal balance where we have too much testosterone in our system, then it throws off things like our monthlies. We sometimes can have, at least in my case, because I am a lot more like darker haired, my hair will grow very thick, like on everywhere else on my body, and including like my face. Like I have to get this stash off. I have to fix my eyebrows, like, I'm not going to say constantly, but, every few days, I'm growing a little beard here, and I need to pluck, and it sucks. We're more prone to, like, even more acne. Our monthlies can be worse, or they just don't come as consistently. Like, I learned that I had the condition right before I went into college that summer, because I had not had my monthly for 3 months, and so they immediately put me on birth control just so that the blood inside of me would not become necrotic.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I have my anxiety disorder is hormonally based, as well as the PCOS.
Right.
They kind of work in tandem, and so at least that helps me know, like, I can expect to not feel as good when I am going down from ovulating, because that's how the body knows that, hey, we're about to clear out everything that's in the system, and then I'll feel better when my hormones start going back up when I get to ovulation. And I've learned how to balance out my medication so that way I feel better during certain times, although things like big holiday events or breaks this last cycle has been kind of rough. And I haven't actually felt really good today, but I just have to take it as it is,
Right.
and it's very helpful when I tell myself, look, you know what's going on. It's not like when this first started and you were paranoid that somehow you had invited something evil into your midst, and this is all your fault, and you're stressing your family out for no reason, and all of these other negative, not helpful thoughts. I now know what's happening to my body, even if I'm not able to control it perfectly. But that is helpful for me.
Yeah.
So, I'm
That
sorry,
makes-
that just sort of went woo everywhere.
That
Yes,
makes
John.
total sense.
I'm just wanting to say this for all the guys listening. I'm sorry about that last little bit, but that was needed to be said.
All the guys
no.
listening, you should know how to take care of a woman during that time.
Oh,
and all
no,
the- and
no,
all
I
the
get that,
guys-
but not everybody listening to it is at that point in their life.
And all the guys listening, you need to know how monthlies work. Because I've heard stories of men who are old enough who should know how it works, and they talk about, oh, women can just turn it off and not know.
No.
She can't.
No,
So
no,
I-
no,
If we
no,
could,
no.
we would.
The only reason I'm saying is that,
Preach.
gentlemen, please educate yourself, because a woman will think you are stupid otherwise.
She might think that anyways, but that's for a different reason.
I took Liv a second.
I was just checking to make sure.
Yeah.
Questions.
Alright, so...
Do we have any questions?
Not
as
yet.
of yet.
Not as of yet. Okay.
We'll go on to our next point then. Does being a Christian make it harder or easier to deal with mental illness?
Harder.
That's what I said.
That's what I said.
I said both.
Harder.
I mean, I was kind of in the middle with you, John, but like it to me it was kind
It
of
has
harder.
the potential of being easier.
Depending on your relationship with
Explain.
God.
For instance, not a lot, but some mental illnesses, like depression, like addiction, a lot of times has to deal with lack of love.
Right. I can see where you're going with this.
And God is the embodiment of love. He is love itself. So, given in theory, not in practice all the time, if God is love and you're needing love, having more of God in your life should help cure it. Now, flip side, if you sit there and think that it's a sin that you're having these thoughts, downward tailspin all the way down to the ground.
Oh,
Yeah, that's why I said it's harder. Because a lot of times we're met with, oh, you don't have anxiety. You need to just pray some more. You're just not praying enough. Oh, you're not depressed. You just need to pray more.
You're not praying right.
You're not praying right, or
You don't have enough faith.
you don't have exactly all of these excuses to win. And I do believe little bits of the enemy that latch on, creating anxiety, creating depression, creating lies, creating the temptation of addiction, and going forth within that. I truly, truly believe that. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen in Texas, I saw a priest walk in, and I could just see he was covered in just a demonic presence, and the Lord was like, and he, messes with kids. And it, there is that side of things, but it's not, the solution's not always pray it away. It doesn't happen like that in certain aspects. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
No.
It really doesn't. It can in some cases. I've seen, miracles, and I've seen people healed from being autistic or having, a lot of sensory overloads and not knowing what to do with them. And then, boom, the next day, there's a guy in our hometown who has that story. And he now is, one of the most social, has zero symptoms and zero you would never even guess. And that happened through, obviously that happened through prayer. But not in every case does that happen. Sometimes we have to actually go through a process of seeing somebody and talking it out, going on medication and getting that chemical imbalance so we can create a new norm for ourselves. That's not just we can pray through that, and I believe that God will heal us all, but maybe God's got a bigger plan of I need you to talk to this person who's going to walk you through this so you now know for the future that I have planned for you, or an event that is unforeseeable to you, but I know it's going to happen. You now know how to handle it through this situation here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It just kind of occurred to me what you were talking about, how sometimes God leaves things for a reason. That's not, with every... I don't believe it's with every case. I believe that most sickness and suffering in the world just comes from the fact that our ancestors chose sin. And, we have had to live with their decision.
And we have
which
free
is
will.
awesome.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Which is awful. That's what I meant to say.
Well, I thought...
Free will is awesome.
That was the part
Everything
I was
else
I
is
agree.
awful.
That's awesome.
No.
That's awesome.
But, I feel like I'm thinking about me sort of I don't know what kind of person I would be if I didn't have this, but I know that because I have this, I am more sensitive to people who are in similar situations and who, I don't know, I feel like I can just be even more empathic with people because I have been there. I have been at an incredibly low point. I know how to talk about these things. And while everybody's experience is different, at the same time, it's I'm here. I actually understand, whereas some people don't. And I've been through that frustration where when we didn't initially know what this was and having to deal with relatives who were just freaking out. And mentally I'm going, can you not freak out? Because that's what I'm doing right now. And I don't want to be freaking out. And I literally don't feel like I have a handhold here.
Right.
You know? But now I feel like I can be that for other people.
And I encourage you, and I encourage a lot of people that come to me. I tend to be the person in several different communities that I'm in. I tend to be the person that people come to when they're feeling a little overwhelmed or anxious, or they feel like maybe they're taking a statement the wrong way, or they're like spiraling down, like something that's not, like one person said something and now they've spiraled it all the way down to like the ground. Our story is written not for our benefit, but for our testimony. And if my story, the hardships I've gone through, the depression I've gone through, the anxiety I've gone through, and just the self-hatred that I've gone through in my past prevents somebody else from experiencing those same things, or get somebody else out of that dark time, praise God that I went through it. Because if I can if my suffering can benefit somebody else, I can't say anything else but praise the Lord that that's what I went through. And I think that, you know, I'm finding mutual ground.
We're vibing.
Heyo. So are you vibe or am I vibe? And are you flash or am I flash?
No, we're vibing.
I know, I was making
But we haven't done a vibe check, which is good.
Yeah, I was doing a DC
Jordan,
joke.
John's got his hand raised.
Okay,
John
John
can
and
go.
then Jordan.
I'll go.
But I say, though I have not suffered from any mental illness except for maybe problems with anger, which I don't know the reason
You
why.
had temporary anxiety.
Yeah. But there's somebody I know that would have had, in Jordan's definition, a mental condition that, along with it, suffered from epilepsy.
Oh.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact thing he had, but it would cause him not only to stutter, but he just didn't process things very well because of it. And they were talking about, because the seizures were getting worse and more often, that he needed brain surgery because there was like it had a lot to do with like the structure in his brain, like an extra thing or whatever. Again, I can't remember because this is years ago. And he was the one that decided to go through with the surgery. And he said, if me going through the surgery can help bring one person closer to God, then I need to do it. And I know this guy, and that statement probably took about 4 to 5 minutes to come out. And I know his dad, and me and Jordan have been coaches for Upward, and the guy that got me into Upward soccer was that dad.
What's his condition now?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't spoken since they left the church that they were doing Upward with, and I do know that he survived the operation.
Still a good testimony.
And I know he did help bring one person, one of the nurses, to the Lord through his testimony. And
That is amazing.
That is good.
I'm going to make 2 comments. I think going live what you said about how a lot of times the response is just pray it away. We forget a lot of times, because mental illness has such a stigma around it.
Oh,
we forget that it's a very real thing, and that there are people who very real have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. And if it's not obviously seen, like a physical condition, I feel like going up to somebody who truly struggles with a mental illness or a mental condition, going up to them and saying, well, you're just not praying enough, is like going up to somebody who got their arm bitten off in a shark attack and was like, well, you're just not praying enough to get that arm back. It's the same thing.
Literally
Absolutely.
the same thing.
It's a slap in the face.
It is a slap in the face. So that's my first kind
It's
of
very opposite
thing.
Christian type thing.
It is. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not Christ-like.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah. So that's my first kind of on that. The other
I
What's
love
your
the
other
sound effects?
My other
I love the sound
Yeah.
effect.
my other kind of thing on this is going back to if it makes it harder or easier. The reason I said harder is because we are told we have an extra strength with Christ, and I truly 100% believe that.
Yes.
When, for me, because I struggle with depression, when I get into those episodes, because it is, when I get into those episodes where I feel depressed, I sit there, one thing that I know that I used to do, I don't so much anymore, but one of the things I used to do a lot is I would see those verses where it talks about that extra strength, and I would see these, people who were witnessing about it, and I feel like God has just left me. And it's like, why is it that these people get the extra strength, but I don't get it? So that, for me, that's where it makes it harder, is because in your mind, clearly and logically, yes, you do have that extra strength, and yes, you do have that pouring of love, like John said, but in the moment, in your heart, you don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a battle between your heart and your head going on of, I should be feeling this, I'm not feeling this. Well, how horrible am I that I'm not feeling this? And it's this battle going on.
This is something I definitely like to comment on, because ever since I was in middle school, I had intrusive thoughts, and I didn't realize what they were. And intrusive thoughts are defined as, like, explicit or blasphemous or whatever, like, uncomfortable thoughts that just make you, like, want to die on the inside, and they just keep coming and keep coming. And they are a symptom, they can be a symptom of bipolar disorder, but mine was not that. But they came...
We're podcasting.
Well, now it's the favorite guessing game of the South. Was that a gun or fireworks?
Or did a car backfire?
No, that was a gun. That was a gun.
I'm just saying that sometimes
If I had to guess, 12 gauge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
So, it took me, after I actually know that was a medical thing I was dealing with, and not some sort of, like, spiritual, that I was solely responsible for or whatever, I've had to tell myself, remember what is logical. It's okay that you're not feeling this way, because God said, in the Bible it says that the heart is deceitful above all things, and so your heart can be telling you all of these things, and your brain, well, not your brain, but you know what I mean, your chemicals or whatever is going crazy, blah, blah, blah. God understands when you have to tell yourself, it's okay, I know what is written, I am going to believe that is what is happening, but I understand that I'm feeling this way now. I don't feel like that somehow takes away from the fact that you are having a crisis, and that you want your mind and your heart or your body or whatever to be at peace with itself. I don't know, to me it's like, I know the way this is, I just know that my body and my brain are being stupid right now, So that kind of is what gives me peace, because I know what is actually going on, even if I am having an episode, which thankfully I have not had in a while. So, yeah, it's just being able to see into the future, to know what the future holds, and that this does not last forever, and that I know what I can hold on to, even if I have to just hold on with my logical self and not my emotional self, because I am a very emotional person, and I like my emotions, but sometimes my emotions are dumb. So, that's just it. Sorry, that was kind of weird. Alright.
Normally, this is the time when I would tell you about our sponsors, or lack thereof, and how to reach out to us if you want to sponsor us. However, the group has decided that we are going to wait on getting sponsors. So, instead, starting in March, we're going to be using this space to talk about some wonderful charities, ministries, and outreach opportunities that the table team will be sponsoring for that month. We can't wait. In the meantime, please continue listening to us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast, finally, as well as YouTube. We are still on YouTube. That's all for me. Thanks again for listening. Bye, guys.
This is something I just thought of. It's not in our outline, but I don't think we have any group text questions. So
they've all left us. It's too late.
For our group text, I'm going to submit one real fast. And can we just go around and
We have
say...
a group text from...
from me! Can we just go around and real quick give a short thing of, like, what specifically mental health-wise we struggle with? Because I know we've all kind of referenced it, but I want to make sure our listeners know we're talking about something that we've all experienced. That this is not coming from, like... we're looking over and being like, well, this is what we think.
We're looking at the ants in the box.
Yeah.
We are dissecting them.
This is part of the reason why I've been quiet, because I do suffer from anger, and I do suffer from...
I'm gonna need you to stop shooting people or whatever, zombies
We're
or
not hearing
deer.
anything afterward. Or zombie deer.
Or zombie deer outside, please and thank you. We're podcasting.
We apologize for the shotgun shots in the background. We do live...
Like we can do anything about
we,
that.
We live in the country.
We in the country, boys.
And it's a Sunday, and...
It's not hunting season.
It doesn't matter.
Let's go shoot
The sun is out, and it's a Sunday.
It's not hunting season.
Anyways, as I was saying, I do suffer from anger issues, and I have had situational anxiety, but it's been very mild, and I do not want to have that outlook of I'm looking down, so I've been trying to stay really quiet, even though... Because I don't have too much.
We all have that episode where we don't feel like we can talk
but
about
you
something.
Also have,
and that's fine.
You also have experience with me directly, because...
With you directly, with my older brother who has been diagnosed with Asperger's.
With me.
With you, with Caroline, with Olivia. I mean, I've experienced people with this stuff, but me personally, I have not.
And I feel like our listeners get that.
Yeah, and I feel like I just want to commend you, and I appreciate the fact that you, as someone who has struggled and continues to battle anxiety every so often, I still, I've figured out ways to cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken care of certain aspects of my life, but in the past have had massive anxiety issues, have had depression, those two being the main things that I've struggled with and that I've suffered with. There's nothing worse for me is when I talk to somebody who's never experienced it, trying to relate. Because, one, I would never try to relate my depression or my anxiety with Jordan because we have two different kinds of depression. But, like, I am completely fine with you speaking up because you are her wife. You are
her husband. Thank
That's
you.
the second time I've called you a girl tonight.
I'm sorry.
So sorry.
I think we know who wears the pants in the family now.
But on
Although
the
you're
flip
both are wearing
side,
literally the same exact outfits.
yeah.
On purpose, actually.
But on the flip side, you understanding that it is different from the outside looking in. That's I commend you on that. What?
She was saying we need to switch shirts.
Sorry.
That actually
That's
be
all
really
right.
funny.
So to answer your question, even though I've already done it, I still, struggle with anxiety, especially in certain kind of situations. But I had a massive anxiety and depression issue back in the past.
I struggle with, depending on how far I let it go, I struggle with severe depression. I, as a teenager, got to the point where I was cutting on a regular basis.
Are we going to call it clinical depression? I just wanted to...
Well, because I've never,
You've never been clinically diagnosed.
I've never been clinically diagnosed.
Okay, right,
I call
right.
it clinical depression. I almost called it diagram.
Clinical diagram. I can see squares.
I call it clinical depression, but I've actually never been diagnosed with it. I've been diagnosed with depression, but not clinical depression.
And you also have PCOS.
And I also have PCOS. But I've actually never been told whether or not those correlate.
Well, I know it does.
No, I know, but
my
I've never...
medical practitioners have told me that.
Yeah,
so
that's never been told to me.
For the record, I have GAD, which is general anxiety disorder, and PCOS. And I take 2 meds and a crap ton of supplements for all of those things together. And it helps me stay sane.
You, totally interrupted me.
No, I didn't. You were
Yes,
done.
No, I didn't. No, I wasn't.
Okay, then finish.
If you want to hear more about how we handle conflict, go back to our second episode.
No, you keep going.
All I was going to say is I struggle with severe depression to the point where I still, because this is another thing too, once you've done something like cutting once, it's very hard when you start going through those episodes again to resist the temptation.
Oh,
So
my soul and body, will they stop? It sounds like it's getting close.
it's our next
Are
door
they
neighbors.
shooting off 12 guns for
Probably.
the queen or something?
Probably.
Skeet shooting.
Yeah, that's all it is. Sorry.
It's a ski.
I'm saying this right now, listeners. I'm sorry. We live in the country. Every once in a while, you're gonna hear
A
shots in
gun.
the background. I can't do anything about
Fireworks.
that. But in the last
Bluegrass music.
Yep. In the last couple of years, I've started struggling with anxiety as well because I can feel when I start slipping, and it's that's that battle within me.
Mhm.
And so it's the whole, I don't want to do that. So now, like, I get tense up and I get anxious about the approach of what's going on. And so, yeah, I struggle with both now. But my emphasis, the thing that I really struggle with is depression. And a lot of times I don't know I'm depressed until I have a mental breakdown.
And that depression and anxiety are kind of on a spectrum, if we want to call it that. So that makes total sense.
Yes, Liv.
ma'am. You at the arm.
What would you say was the root of the cutting in your life?
I know the first time I ever cut, I know where I was, and I know why I did it, and it still is true to this day. It's a control issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot of people will say this, that it's a control. There's two big reasons why people cut. It's something you can control, and it's so that you can actually feel because you're so numb.
Mm-hmm.
Mine tie into each other, so
Okay.
I have little pieces of both. The first time I ever cut, I was upstairs in my bedroom, and I was pacing back and forth, and I was shaking, and I felt so many emotions at once.
Mm-hmm.
I was sad, I was angry, I was hurting, and I still do this, is I'll get shaky, and I was walking back and forth in my room, and all I wanted to do was just be able to go to bed, and I couldn't calm myself down, and I cut my wrist. The instant I did that, I calmed down, and that's not a good thing, and I'm saying right now, don't use that to calm yourself down. I don't encourage it. I'm saying what I have gone through. There was a point this past year, which was a very, very, very rough point for me, where I slipped into major depression. I didn't know that I did. I went into what I call autopilot, which is I just was doing. I wasn't thinking.
Mm-hmm.
There was a defining moment in May, right around my birthday, where everything came crashing onto me because I was not out of work in the sense of I didn't have a job anymore, but we were on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to, like what you were saying with Caroline, everything calmed down, and I was able to start feeling stuff again, and I did that again, and I started getting panicky. And John was great and tried to help, but once I get to that point, it's hard for me to control. And same thing, I went and I found something and cut my wrists, and it's still, I wish I could say that I was done cutting, but again, when you get to that point, it's very, very hard to resist once you've done it.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never done it, it is a lot easier to resist that. But since I have done it, I'm human. I slip into those periods, and I did it again, and as soon as I did it, I calmed down, and I went to John, I pulled him to the side, and I just said, I'm sorry, and he knew. I mean, by that time, he knew what state I was in. And I started getting into therapy. And now I have coping techniques, which I didn't have before, of when I start getting panicky. I have learned that your breathing actually has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
So I have apps on my phone that when I start getting panicky, John knows to grab my phone and start playing those apps to where I can get my breathing under control. But I just never had those coping techniques up until now. Because a lot of times it was, I would slip into depression and I would just not want to do anything. It was that numb feeling. But it has turned more into I just need to calm down. It's like the anxiety and the depression are working with each other, and I just need something to just put my focus and my control into. It's not that I feel like my world is spinning out of control, and it's the only thing I can do to control. It's to control my body from just flipping out and me doing this. Bing, 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 bing. So I'm not going to hide what I've gone through because I think it hides in secrecy.
Absolutely.
So, and this is something I want to say. Y'all have been super supportive. Y'all have let me come to you when I need to come to you, and you still let me come to you when I need to come to you. This past week was not fun. I didn't do anything, but I had a breakdown where it just got too much and everything just came out. So, yeah, it's not fun.
And having those moments of letting them come out
Mm-hmm.
is one of the areas that it was my coping mechanism and my, like, habit after I figured out what was going on is I'm a verbal processor when it comes to these things. So for me, it was digging out the junk, finding out what that bottom layer of junk it was. And once I hit it, immediately felt better.
Yep.
But sometimes that takes me 2 hours to get through, like,
Yep.
this is making me anxious. This conversation made me feel this way. This made me feel this way. You know, being in this space is making me feel this way. Not like this space, but in general.
Right.
Yeah,
like
no, we get
being
it.
in the car, or doing this, and all of these tiny little things piling up when the root of it is, I didn't sleep enough. Or
Yeah.
I have a bill coming up. Or something root.
Oh yeah,
As far as
felt that too.
And it just everything else
Yep.
builds up. So that's mine.
Can I give a little, just tiny piece of advice? Heard on Tumblr, and I love it so much. If you hate everybody else, you are hungry. If you hate yourself, you're tired.
Yep.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like that. I also learned this acronym in college. HALT. Are you hungry, angry? Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And that's if you start feeling depressed or anxious or something,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So examine yourself. What's going on? Is there a fix for that? So that way you're not just wallowing in your own thoughts and making it worse.
Yeah.
And I was going to put a small thought in here. As somebody who is married, dealing with...
To the screwed up one.
No,
No, that's
not
something.
talk about
No,
it.
that's something I affectionately refer to when I'm in an okay mood where I can joke about it. I seriously, like, very lovingly refer to myself as the crazy one in the partnership.
As long as we are.
Yeah, no, it's not a self-deprecating thing.
Okay.
It's me sitting there going, I'm the crazy one in the family. Like,
Okay.
no, it's not something it's not a self-deprecation thing.
Okay. I'm
it's
just
me
making
joking.
Sure.
No, I think if you can joke about it,
Yeah.
I think if you can joke about it with people that you're comfortable with and are willing to do that, that's a sign of healing.
Yeah. Sorry.
When they're going through the thick of it, know that it's not always what they're saying is not always what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Just let them get it out.
They're trying to make sense of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and something I actually do need to get better on myself is when it doesn't make any sense of what they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
not trying to attack the not making sense part, but trying to reassure where the end was.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times
Yeah.
the ending thing is something that makes sense, but how they got there doesn't make sense.
It took a while.
Case in point, it was this recent time was about money and us being completely out of money because of the last month or two we've been having to spend a lot of money on pets and taking care of some stuff, and it was
House.
No
lights.
And
necessarily-
Christmas, yeah.
no necessarily sight of seeing the spending end, except for the fact that it's going to have to end because eventually you will find the right combination of things.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that at that point in time, you can't see, how I understand it, based off of my experience, is...
With me. He's referring to me.
Yes. That the other person cannot necessarily see the end. They see the last X amount of time, and now they're just replaying that forever and ever and ever until you've reached X point of, in this case, being broke, living in a cardboard box underneath a bridge, or death, or whatever, It eventually plays its way out because they're going to go to the worst case scenario in that case, at least in mine and Jordan's experience.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I also would say something I say to you all the time. Don't try to fix it at the time. It's the most aggravating thing when you're sitting there and talking about, again, going with what happened this past week, which was me breaking down about money. Had John sat there and been like, in that conversation while I'm trying to process and I'm trying to get to what you said, Liv, the core of what's bugging me, for him to sit there and if I'm saying, well, we have too much money, if he were to sit there and go, well, I'll just start working more days at my other job, he's trying to fix it right then. And I don't need it fixed. I just need to be able to get stuff out. So, and I will say that's a very stereotypical guy thing, is they just want to go and fix it.
Or
Don't.
a stereotypical Olivia thing.
Or a very stereotypical Olivia thing. Don't go out there.
It's not that you want the problem to be fixed that you're feeling anxious about. It's you want the anxiety to be fixed. And then you can deal with
I just want the anxiety.
or-
I just want the anxiety or the depression out.
Yeah,
it's not even.
That's what I mean. You want the anxiety to go away, and the problem itself will get fixed once you feel better.
Well, go ahead, Liv.
I was gonna say it's interesting that you bring that up because that is such a very delicate cycle coming from the way I handle anxiety. Is if the anxiety goes away, but the solution has not been brought into play yet, the anxiety then returns.
Yeah.
Because solution has not been made, so anxiety cannot evaporate. And then after moving back from Houston, being in a state of like, wow, I feel a lot better, that then made me anxious because I did not feel something. There was nothing I needed to tend to. There was no triggers, and I was like, this is making me anxious to not even have something to fix, something to handle, something to take care of. And it took me a good chunk of time to realize that this delicate cycle of solution to anxiety, anxiety to solution, is never really done going in a circle, in a circle, in a circle until you get into that habitual state of the anxiety is going to be there, the solution's going to be there, I need to figure it out in my own time, on my own way.
I guess the only reason I put it the way I put it is that sometimes, the way my body works is that my body overreacts to things that I normally wouldn't have that much anxiety about.
Yeah.
And I just want to feel better so that I can go to the thing that, it might not even be bad. Like, yesterday when I was teaching the boys at church, I have a little, I'm one of the rotational teachers, and we were talking about some fun stuff. And I was like, whoa, why am I feeling anxiety? Because my stupid body doesn't know how to differentiate between eustress and distress. And it's just like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Why are you making me feel like this?
Yeah.
So that's me. It's not always something. Sometimes there is kind of like an underlying, this is sort of an extra thing, you know, but most of the time it's just like, my stupid amygdala. So.
Yeah, and I think everyone has to deal with anxiety, depression differently. But, yeah, that's that.
Alright, so what should be the church's role when it comes to helping those with mental illness? Yes, Liv.
Actually help.
They need more qualified counselors and therapists.
Ooh, yay.
Because that are specialized in not just the spiritual counseling, but the mental counseling as well. One of the things that we don't see, especially in churches, and I'm going to even go as far as saying schools, like universities.
Yes.
Because that's where I got my first session, and that's when I, and it was in that moment that I was like, I need to actually leave school to start healing better, because my counselor is just saying, remove dance, that's what's causing you depression and anxiety and X, Y, and Z. And I'm like,
excuse me now.
But like, if I remove that, what do I have? And down deep, the root of it in college, identity issues. Didn't know who I was. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had people telling me, you need to have a backup plan. I was failing every backup plan. Failed multiple classes because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But having more qualified, licensed counselors and therapists in the schools and in the churches, it would benefit so much better, because then it wouldn't be this taboo topic, because mental health is taboo in church.
It is. There's a huge stigma on it.
It is.
And that's coming from the side of a Christian who wants that therapy license.
Well, and I can't remember, you and me were talking to somebody who's a church counselor or something like that, and they're talking about how they more and more are encouraged not to help and just refer people to counseling at a licensed place, because again, there's liability issues. And what Jordan and I were talking about last night is, how many people can you save if the church had, let's just say they had one therapist on staff that only worked, worked 5 days a week or 4 days a week, whatever. But think how many lives can be saved from new mothers going through
postpartum.
Thank you. How many college students can be saved through from alcoholism and all that stuff, through depression and addictions because of all that stuff. I mean, there would be a lot of lives saved, not necessarily saved as in accepting Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior, but physically saving their life, which is a great way of ministering to them at the same time.
I had it as, this is a couple episodes ago, I referred to my Bible teacher. I'm going to refer to him again. Shout out, you know who you are. He used to
know who you are.
He used to say that church should be an AA for Christians. And what he meant by that was, he used to refer to it as two different things. He used to say it was an AA for Christians and an AA for hypocrites. And what he meant by that is that it's that, if you have ever gone to an AA meeting, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the things that is so beneficial about it is that community and that accountability. Mm-hmm. And going in and being able to go into a non-judgmental, safe place. And that's something that they say, you are in a safe place. It's why it's anonymous. To go into that non-judgmental, safe place and say what you're struggling with and connect with people who are struggling with the exact same thing. And I feel like, going with what both of you said, if you have a therapist on staff that's there, that would run groups like that, a lot of reasons why people don't go to get therapy is because they can't afford it.
Right.
I hate saying this, but that's a factor.
Yeah.
Is you have to pay for therapy. You may have bomb insurance that allows you to go to therapy, and that's awesome if you do, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And if you were able to go to a church that you knew you could meet in a non-judgmental way, and that's the big thing, is so many times, like, my family knew what I was going through. The Bible teacher that I had was rocking and found out about what I was going through and made me tell my parents, which was terrifying. But I don't think, I'm really trying to think if anybody in the previous churches that I've gone to know what I've gone through.
Right.
Because I did not feel like it was a safe space. Mm-hmm. I feel like that with the church now. I feel like if I stood up and said what I had gone through with my depression, that would be just taken with whole hearts. I mean, the viewers didn't see it, but when I was talking about what I went through, Caroline grabbed my hand and just was holding it. And I feel like that's what the church would do, is they would just grab my hand and be like, we're here to support you. I see your hand. Hold on. I think we need to look at how the church is, and we expect, and we said this in another episode, we expect to go to church, or the church's view is that you come to church perfect, and you learn. All these perfect people are coming to church. Church should be AA for hypocrites, because everybody is one. And you should be able to walk into a church, feel safe, feel loved, feel unjudged, and feel open. And we have gotten to the point where you dress up nice, and you put on the smile, and the kids are fighting 5 minutes before you walk in the door, and as soon as they walk into the door, they're the perfect little angels. And
not at my church.
Well, no, but that's the thought behind it.
I know.
Is you're not allowed to show
Problems.
if you're problems in your family. And if you do show a major problem, when there's a scandal, that's what it's viewed as. It's viewed as a scandal.
Yeah.
A family divorce, is viewed as, oh my goodness, those sinners. A good friend of ours, when her parents got together, they almost got kicked out of the church because her mom had a divorce, and that was a big deal. And so they left that church because they didn't feel accepted and loved and welcome there. And that's a big deal. We need to redefine again the purpose of church, which was last month's last podcast. It needs to be a safe place, and it needs to be an AA. We need to stop treating it as this place for perfect people to come. We need to treat it as you were there for healing.
Yep.
You.
What are we talking about?
Sorry, John. I forgot.
I was actually trying to remember what I had now, but
Sorry, what was the question?
That one.
I'm trying to remember what you were saying when I first put my hand up.
look at my notes.
Oh, that was loud.
You
I
want
said
me
AA.
to yawn louder?
Yes, AA for Christians. That's what I was talking about.
No, it's gone.
Okay.
Educating themselves, because a lot of harm is done if they just make judgments about a person when they don't understand what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because that peer pressure and that judgment is, I mean, it's harmful. And if you're supposed to be built up in the church, you're making the person not want to be there anymore, you know. So to me, it's education. So that way people aren't making assumptions and not helping you. And the more you know about yourself also, the easier it is to tell other people about ways that they can either A, help you, or B, understand what you're going through. So, yeah.
John remembered his point.
I remember at the church that we met Liv at, there was one person you got pointed to help you with some of that stuff.
That's true.
So, out of the entire church, you went to, I can't remember if it was the pastor or the music director.
It was the music director I went to.
And they pointed you to somebody that you got pretty close with and stuff like that.
I went to that person once, and I mean, I got some insight from her, but it wasn't like a huge, like.
You were comfortable enough telling that person some stuff, and they did check up on you a little bit through text message and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing that I struggle with is sometimes we go to people, and that's why I'm so active in my students' lives. When they reach out to me first, because I don't want to cross any boundaries or anything, and I have to set boundaries, but when they reach out to me and they create that mentorship, and then they reach out to me looking for help, it's not just going to be a couple texts here and there. It's going to be, I'm going to call you when you text me and say, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. I'm going to call you and say, hey, let's talk this through. Let's have a verbal conversation. Or let me just tell you about my day if you just need to hear some solidifying stuff. Or I'm going to reach out to them if I haven't heard from them in a couple days. Be like, hey, I know you were struggling over here a couple days ago. How's that going? And I don't know, which person you're talking about. But if it was just a few texts, that's someone who does not need to be in that role. If they're not being active.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. Do not be active if you're not going to pursue a follow-up.
And I get that. What I'm saying is there was a little bit of something.
Yeah, I mean, there was, and she sat down with me for a day and talked with me and stuff.
Good.
And this was somebody who had not met me except for once.
Gotcha.
So I think, but it also going to what you're saying, it also needs to be reciprocated. So if you were constantly bombarding, a particular student with that mentorship and they were never responding back, eventually you stop.
Yes.
And so I can't, it was so long ago, I can't remember, but it probably was that she was messaging me and I was giving very short messages back, because at the end of the day, this is a person that I met once.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that connection with them. And they were significantly older than I was.
Yeah.
And so there was a disconnect there. So yeah, I don't know how that would have gone had I been pushing as much as she was pushing.
It's a two-way street. When you go and get counseling or therapy, if you're not willing to be receptive to what the professional has to say, then you're not ready to receive it. You're not ready for counseling. You need to be in there, but you have to be prepared to make changes if you're in there.
But at the same time, if you go to a counselor that you don't feel like what you were saying at college, if you go to a counselor that at your core you know that that's not the problem, don't write off counseling.
Exactly.
Go to another counselor.
There are other counselors you can go to.
Keep trying.
Exactly.
Try before you buy.
Exactly.
Try everything.
So we've kind of already touched on this, but we're gonna formally do it real quick though before we hit our last point. Who do we have as a shout out this week?
Last one for the month. I'm very excited. Our last shout out goes to Joe the Woe. Hey Joe.
Hey Joe.
He left us our very first YouTube comment on our very first episode, and I just wanted to give him a special shout out because he was the very first to give us a a shout out and a little comment on our YouTube. So, Joe the Woe, thank you so much. We are very blessed to have you. He is also somebody who has wrote in very good topics for us to potentially look into in the future. So, thanks, Joe.
They're added to our list.
Yeah, they are.
So, last go around. As a Christian, how do you help somebody with a mental illness / what advice would you give to a fellow Christian who maybe has somebody in their life that's struggling with a mental illness and they're trying to figure out how to help them? Who wants to go first? John?
I can go first.
Because John has somebody in his life. Me.
Few things. Showing love and patience. Those two things, in my personal opinion, make up 60% of the battle. Head knowledge, you can go without it and get by if you can really show those two things. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be loved. And
I need somebody to love.
And you need the patience to be able to sift through some of the stuff. Outside of that, it is getting to know the person, their family, if, there's somebody not directly connected to you. And just know that it's going to be ups and downs.
That's where the patience comes in, too. You want me to go?
Yeah.
Or you want to go?
I've been going this way all day.
Okay.
I'm habitual.
I know. I would say have a very non-judgmental spirit.
Yeah.
As much as you can. And realize that it may come across as seeking attention, but that may not be it. There are some people who do it just to seek attention. I'm not going to sit there and say there's not. But just understand that this may not be attention seeking, that they may desperately need help. I know that for me, that was a big thing. Because I went to a private school, it was a lot smaller, and so everybody knew everybody's business. It's just how it is. We would tell new kids that all the time. Get ready to be in all the drama. Well, I'm pretty good about not being in the drama. Get ready to be in all the drama. So for me, the stuff that I went through, and when I would have breakdowns at school or whatever, it was taken as attention seeking, and it was taken as fake. And shout out, he knows I'm going to do this, so shout out to a very good friend of ours, Will, who was very good as a teenager dealing with his own stuff, was very good when he found out about like my cutting and about the stuff that I was going through, actively not lecturing me, not getting mad at me, but being very mindful in future conversations. If he started noticing patterns, or if he started noticing certain music that I was playing or whatever, to start being active in getting me diverting from, so that I wouldn't go down that path and I wouldn't end up cutting. So that, I think, having a non-judgmental spirit, but also having a very mindful spirit. And then the other thing too is that, Liv, you talked about somebody walking in and you just seeing something not right with them. I think if you are seeing that, going to that person and having that and saying to them, I just feel like God is speaking to me and saying that something's not right with you, but going with that attitude of love and not judgment. And it really comes down to it is not being judgmental.
Yep.
That's what I would say.
Educate yourself. Just educate yourself, whether you're the person with it or the person who is trying to help somebody who has it. Read about other people's testimonies. What have they gone through? Are their experiences similar to the person that you are trying to help? Learn about what could be causing this. Is it a condition? Is it an illness? Do you think therapy would be beneficial? Work together with their family. Always emphasize that they are your number one priority, and that you love them, and that you will respect their decisions, but you want to see them flourish and grow. And kindness while not pushing is very helpful. And educate yourself.
Liv?
Don't be afraid to speak it out after you are comfortable. Remember that while it's in the thick of it, remind yourself that somebody else is going to need to hear this story, and you could be saving a life telling your story.
Is that why you made me tell mine?
No.
Because your story's not out loud.
No,
Do what?
because
Your
I
story is not helpful, Jared. No.
I said that before I made you say your story originally, back at the
Gotcha.
very beginning.
Yeah.
You know, being willing to utilize it as a testimony, and
Yeah.
maybe you're going through the thick of it, so in the future, someone who comes into your life can listen to it and benefit from it at the end of the day.
I'm gonna add another question here. I know we're needing to wrap up, but I'm gonna add another question in here. What advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with mental illness?
Direct message me at Call to the Pod.
Call to the pod?
Call to the Table Pod. Or send us an email. We'd love to pray for you. And we'd love to be that, at least, first step of communication. We could potentially help you find somebody within your means of capabilities to connect you with further down the road.
We all agree.
Talk to somebody.
Yeah,
We all thought that was a good idea.
Yep, speak up. I would say speak up to anybody that listens. And if somebody doesn't listen, go to somebody else.
Yep.
Because the devil loves secrecy. And the more you keep it secret, the more you keep it quiet, and the more you try to carry it on your own, the worse it's going to be.
Yep.
So speak
All
up.
right, John. Lead us out.
Lead us out, babe.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Call to the Table. For prayer requests, getting in touch with one of us for any needs that you may need us to be talking to you about.
Needs.
I know I'm getting a little
Sneeze.
paranoid with Olivia
needs and the
right next to
sneeze
her
and
microphone.
And the needs. Sorry. Dr.
But feel free to contact us at Call to the Table Pod at Instagram and Facebook, or feel free to email us at call to the table at gmail.com.
Come.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.
You forgot to say, have a blessed day.
Have a blessed day.
Thank
Aw.
you. Goodbye.
Bye.